Very often, more often than I think we might suspect, Jesus is giving us pro tips in the Gospels. He's giving us pro tips, things that are going to be helpful to us if we're able to listen and catch what he's talking about. And today's pro tip is to avoid something that's been coined in a phrase that's rather popular. You may have heard already at some point, virtue signaling. His pro tip is to avoid virtue signaling. If you haven't heard that phrase before, virtue signaling refers to when we say something or do something so that other people would see how virtuous we are, where the message is not so much what we did, but what it demonstrates about us. It would be something akin to when at the Jesuit social not too long ago, I interrupted it to ask them if they knew how the bond system worked for prisons, because I wanted them to ask why I had that question and needed to know about it. And it's because it was some work that I was doing with migrants and the incarcerated, trying to communicate to the community, look at this amazing thing that I am doing, and look at me. It's the same sort of thing I think we sometimes do when you make kind of an offhand comment of like, oh, yeah, like the Lamborghinis are too low to the ground, hate driving that. It's signaling something about what you have access to and the resources. And I think we do this all the time in a variety of ways. And Jesus' pro tip is when those things come to mind or when you want to do it, don't. For two reasons. One, because it's kind of hard at times to know our own intentions. We may have actually no desire to virtue signal, but he's actually telling you just avoid doing things that might lead to that. So you don't have to question whether or not what your intentions were. And the second is that every time that we do that, what we're actually doing is putting our joy, our peace of mind into the hands of another person. And we're looking for their approval. And he wants us to know that God has already given us his approval. Christ, he has judged the world as worthy of redemption, including each and every single one of us, and sent his son to die for any sins that we may have so that we may know that we are loved and cared for by God. And what I think is really beautiful and something consoling and slightly different from what I'm saying is that he says at the end of each of these different repetitions that God, who sees in secret, knows your intentions and knows what you're doing. And I encourage you to read that or hear that not as he judges you and he knows that you're virtue signaling, but more so that even in moments when we might have good intentions and bad outcomes unintentionally, God sees the good intentions that we had. Or maybe when we take a small action that may seem like a small kind act to another person, in God's eyes, he knows how great a leap we had to make interiorly to take that small action. So there's one pro tip and one consoling thing in today's reading. The one pro tip is avoid doing things to signal to others, because you're kind of putting your peace into their hands. And the second one is that if we do things that have unexpectedly bad outcomes, God knows the good intentions that we had, and he judges us based on our intentions interiorly, not necessarily the result of what we do.